My name is Jillian, and for most of my 34 years, I have been the quiet pillar of my family. Not the fun one, or the successful one, or the beautiful one, but the reliable one. The one who remembers birthdays, who knows how to fix the leaky faucet, who listens without judgment and offers solutions without fanfare. I work as a senior project manager for a mid-sized construction firm, a job of timelines, budgets, and unforgiving deadlines. My life is a carefully constructed fortress of competence and responsibility, a role I slipped into so long ago, I'd forgotten I had a choice. I was staring at a blueprint on my computer screen, trying to reconcile a subcontractor's invoice with our budget, when my phone rang. It was Ellie, my youngest sister, her voice bubbling with an infectious excitement that always made me smile. "Jilly, do you have a minute? I want to talk about something amazing," she said. I pushed aside a stack of change orders, the scent of fresh coffee mingling with the dry smell of paper. My hands stilled on the keyboard. "Yeah, I'm here. What's up?" "You know Mom's 55th birthday is next month, right?" she continued, her tone conspiratorial. "Well, Jessica, Mike, and I have been cooking up something really special." I leaned back in my chair, a genuine warmth spreading through my chest. "Oh yeah? What are you planning?" Ellie lowered her voice, a dramatic hush that was so quintessentially her. "We've decided to book a whole week at Blue Ridge Resort. A proper getaway. Everyone agrees Mom deserves a truly unforgettable trip." The idea was wonderful. Our mother, Karen, had spent her life as the gravitational center of our family, a tireless caregiver who rarely took a moment for herself. She deserved to be celebrated. But Ellie's next words came with a familiar cadence. "We need everyone to chip in for the costs, of course," she added brightly. "What do you think?" I braced myself. "How much are we talking about, Elle?" When she named the amount, I nearly dropped my coffee mug. The figure was more than I had spent on my last proper vacation, a quiet trip to the coast 2 years ago. "I know it's a lot," she said quickly, anticipating my hesitation, "but I think it's worth it for Mom. It covers the suites, the spa package for her, everything." I held the phone to my ear, picturing my mother's tired but happy face. A sigh escaped my lips, one of resignation and love. "All right, I'll transfer the money now." Ellie cheered. "You're the best, Jilly. Oh, one more thing. Make sure to keep that whole week free. Block it out. Don't plan anything else, okay?" I frowned. It felt a bit rushed, a bit presumptive, but I chalked it up to Ellie's whirlwind personality. "Okay, consider it done." The following weeks were a blur of meetings and deadlines, leaving me little time to think about the trip. Every time I asked Ellie for details, she would wave a dismissive hand or send a breezy text. "Everything's being taken care of. You don't need to worry about a thing." I took her at her word, assuming my role was simply to provide the funds and show up. Time evaporated, as it always does, and soon, Mom's birthday was just a week away. That Saturday evening, the entire family gathered at my parents' house for dinner. The air was thick with the scent of roasted chicken and the sound of my nieces and nephews shrieking with laughter in the backyard. The atmosphere was lively, a chaotic symphony of family life. As we were finishing dessert, a rich chocolate cake my mother had made, Ellie caught my eye from across the table. She smiled, a bright, triumphant look on her face. "So, it's all finalized. We're all heading up to Blue Ridge Resort next Saturday for Mom's big birthday week," she announced. My mother beamed, her eyes shining with unshed tears of joy. My father, Tom, was already talking about the golf course and the guided fishing trips he wanted to try. Amid the happy chatter, I asked a simple question that would bring the entire celebration to a screeching halt. "So, what's the plan for me? What time should I be ready to go?" The laughter quieted. An uncomfortable silence descended on the table. I looked from face to face, searching for an answer. Jessica, my older sister, suddenly found the pattern on her plate incredibly fascinating. My brother, Mike, cleared his throat and took a long sip of water. Finally, Ellie broke the tension, her voice dripping with a cloying sweetness that set my teeth on edge. "Well, that's the other part of the surprise. You know Mary and Jack, Jessica's kids? They just adore spending time with you. And with Mike's 3 added in, they'll have such a great time together with their amazing Aunt Jillian." I stared at her, my mind struggling to process the implication. A cold dread began to creep up my spine. "Wait, what do you mean?" My voice was a hoarse whisper. You want me to watch all 5 kids? My mother immediately interjected, her tone gentle and placating, as if trying to soothe a child. It's just for 1 week, Jillian. You know your father and I aren't able to keep up with the little ones anymore, and your siblings could really use a break. You're so wonderful with the children, and they love you so much. Her words felt like tiny, sharp icicles piercing my heart. She hadn't asked. They hadn't considered me. They had simply decided. I turned my gaze back to Ellie, trying to keep my composure. So, everyone knew about this? I contributed over $1,000. I took a week off from a demanding job, and you expect me to stay behind and be an unpaid babysitter while you all enjoy the vacation I helped pay for. Jessica still wouldn't meet my eyes. Ellie, however, tilted her head, a picture of nonchalant innocence. You understand, don't you, Jilly? You don't have a family or kids to worry about. Besides, you've never really enjoyed loud, crowded places like resorts. We thought this was the best arrangement for everyone. You don't have a family or kids to worry about. The words echoed in the sudden, cavernous silence of my mind. They had planned this entire scenario without me, without a single thought for my feelings or desires, treating me not as a person, but as a convenient, prepackaged solution to their childcare problem. After all the years I had sacrificed, all the times I had put their needs before my own, this was my reward. To be sidelined, my contribution taken for granted, my presence at the celebration deemed unnecessary. A tremor started in my hands. I slowly placed my fork on my plate, the sound unnaturally loud in the quiet room. I stood up, my chair scraping against the hardwood floor. My voice, when I spoke, was shaking, but it was filled with a resolve I hadn't known I possessed. If that's what you've decided, I said, looking at each of their stunned faces, then I won't be staying. I have given my time and my money to this family over and over again. But I will not do it without a shred of respect. I wanted to be a part of Mom's celebration. But if that's not possible, then I am not your babysitter either. I turned and walked out of the dining room, away from their shocked expressions and the ruins of a birthday party I was never truly invited to. My heart ached with a profound sense of betrayal, but beneath the pain, something else was stirring. It was the first time in my entire life I had chosen myself over them. And it felt like taking my first breath of clean, fresh air. I spent that night tossing and turning, the conversations of the evening replaying in my mind like a cruel loop. The casual way they had assigned me my role, the gentle manipulation in my mother's voice, the entitled nonchalance in Ellie's, it all coalesced into a heavy, suffocating weight in my chest. I felt a deep, primal anger, but beneath it was a profound hurt. They didn't just undervalue me, they didn't seem to see me at all. By morning, after hours of staring at the ceiling, the initial storm of emotion had passed, leaving a quiet, resolute calm in its wake. I decided to try one last time, not with anger, but with reason. I would offer a solution, a fair and logical compromise. I picked up the phone and dialed my mother. She answered on the 3rd ring, her voice already laced with a weary, preemptive disappointment. Jillian, I know you'll come to your senses. You've always been the most considerate one in the family. I took a steadying breath. Mom, I've thought about this all night. I want to suggest a solution. I will hire a professional nanny for the week. A bonded, experienced caregiver. I will personally vet them and I will cover all the costs myself. That way, the kids are safe and looked after, and I can join you on the trip. There was a beat of silence on the other end of the line, and then her voice returned, sharp and cold. Absolutely not, Jillian. I will not have a stranger looking after my grandchildren. The children need someone they know, someone they're comfortable with. You're the best person for that. Your idea is completely irresponsible. I felt as though a bucket of ice water had been dumped over my head. Irresponsible. I repeated, my voice dangerously quiet. I'm offering to pay for a professional to solve a problem so that I, a member of this family, can be included in your celebration. How is that irresponsible? My mother let out a long, theatrical sigh, the kind she used when she was dealing with someone being willfully difficult. Jillian, you know the family needs you. Ellie and Jessica have their own families, their own responsibilities. You only have yourself. And the kids adore you. This isn't such a big deal. It's just 1 week. Before I could form a response, my phone buzzed with another call. Ellie. Reluctantly, I switched over. I didn't even have a chance to say hello before her voice, sharp and accusatory, sliced through the phone. What are you doing? Mom just told me about your insane nanny idea. Are you actively trying to ruin everything? When did you become so selfish? The injustice of her words stole my breath. Ellie, I am trying to find a way for me to also enjoy a vacation that I helped pay for. I took time off work. I want to spend time with my family. What is so wrong with that? Don't you get it? She snapped, her voice rising. We've already planned everything. We need you to watch the kids. This is the best solution for everyone. You are always making things so difficult. The accusation hung in the air, a familiar refrain from my childhood. Difficult? I whispered, a tremor in my voice. Ellie, you and Jessica and Mom planned this entire thing without consulting me once. You assigned me a job, and now you're calling me selfish for not wanting it. Her voice dropped, taking on a tone of cold finality. We just thought you understood what being part of a family means. If you're going to continue to act like this, don't expect any of us to forgive you. I hung up the phone, my hand shaking. I had been called selfish for wanting to be included. I had been called irresponsible for offering a logical, albeit expensive, solution. Tears streamed down my face, hot tears of anger and a dawning, heartbreaking clarity. I had spent my entire life bending and contorting myself to fit the needs of my family, and in return, they had come to see me not as a person, but as a utility. A resource to be deployed at their convenience. For the first time, I realized that this dynamic would never change unless I was the one to break it. That evening, staring at my packed suitcase, the one I had prepared for a mountain resort, I felt a profound shift within me. The feeling of being exploited had finally eclipsed the ingrained habit of compliance. If I gave in this time, I knew with absolute certainty that I would be sealing my fate forever. I opened my laptop. Instead of looking up directions to Blue Ridge, I started searching for flights. Far away. Somewhere warm, somewhere quiet, somewhere they would never think to look for me. My cursor hovered over a small, secluded beach resort in Florida. The images of white sand, turquoise water, and swaying palm trees felt like a balm to my raw, wounded spirit. Without a moment's hesitation, I booked a coach flight and a small hotel room with a balcony overlooking the ocean. I didn't need luxury. I needed peace. I needed to breathe. The next morning, I packed a different bag. Light dresses, a swimsuit, a pair of sandals, and the novel I had been meaning to read for 6 months. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. I didn't leave a note. My phone buzzed incessantly with calls and texts from my mother, my siblings, even my aunts and uncles who had been roped into the campaign of guilt. I silenced it and put it at the bottom of my purse. I owed them no explanations. When the plane landed in Florida, a wave of relief so profound it was almost dizzying washed over me. I stepped out of the airport and into the warm, humid air, taking a deep, shuddering breath of the salty breeze. The oppressive weight of my family's expectations seemed to lift from my shoulders, dissolving into the bright, sunny sky. The hotel was small and charming, my room simple and clean. I walked out onto the balcony and looked at the endless expanse of the ocean. I spent that first afternoon just sitting there, watching the sun dip below the horizon, painting the sky in fiery shades of orange and pink. For the first time in as long as I could remember, I felt completely and utterly free. In the days that followed, I reveled in the quiet, simple moments I had so long been denied. I walked for miles along the shoreline, letting the warm waves wash over my feet. I sat for hours in a small, family-run cafe, reading my book and savoring my coffee without once looking at the time. I signed up for a sunrise yoga class on the beach, something the old Jillian would have dismissed as a frivolous indulgence. Stretching my body toward the rising sun, surrounded by the gentle sound of the surf, I felt a connection to myself that had been dormant for years. On my last evening, I sat on my balcony with a glass of chilled white wine, gazing up at the blanket of stars. I no longer felt the familiar gnaw of guilt or the anxious worry about what my family was thinking. This trip wasn't an act of rebellion. It was an act of reclamation. I was reclaiming my time, my peace, my right to choose my own happiness. And as I watched a shooting star streak across the night sky, I knew with every fiber of my being that I would never go back to being their convenient solution again. While I was rediscovering myself in the gentle rhythm of the Florida coast, the storm I had left behind was raging. I had kept my phone on silent, but curiosity, A persistent human trait, finally led me to check the string of messages that had accumulated. The first ones were from Ellie, sent on the Saturday morning they were supposed to leave. "Jillian, where are you? We're outside your house with the kids. Open the door." An hour later, another from Jessica. "Jillian, this isn't funny. The kids are asking for you. You can't just disappear like this." I pictured them on my doorstep, their luggage packed, their faces a mixture of confusion and irritation as they realized their foolproof plan had a fatal flaw. I wasn't there to execute it. As the day wore on, the tone shifted from confusion to outright anger. "Ellie, you seriously don't care about this family at all? How could you abandon the kids like this? You are unbelievably selfish. Jessica, we trusted you, and you betrayed this family. Mom has been crying all morning because of you." Reading their words, I felt a strange sense of detachment. The guilt I had been conditioned to feel simply wasn't there. Instead, a quiet, buoyant feeling of lightness settled in my chest. I had always been the one to absorb their chaos, to smooth over their problems. This time, the consequences of their own choices were theirs to manage. The next day, there was a series of missed calls from my mother. I finally answered one, bracing myself. Her voice was cold with fury. "Jillian, what have you done? Your nieces and nephews are confused and upset. Ellie had to cancel her spot on the trip to stay home with them, and the entire family is talking about how you've behaved. Don't you feel any shame?" I took a deep breath, the sound of the ocean a calming presence in the background. "Mom, I made my position very clear. I wanted to be a part of your vacation, not to serve as an unpaid employee. If no one was willing to respect that, then the outcome is not my fault." There was a stunned silence, as if she couldn't comprehend my lack of capitulation. Then her voice turned icy. "If you cannot understand that family must come first, then you are not the daughter I raised." I didn't respond. I simply ended the call. Her words, which once would have shattered me, now felt like hollow threats. I had spent my life being the daughter she raised, compliant, self-sacrificing, and silent. That daughter was gone. When I returned from my vacation, tan and rested, I felt as though I was seeing my life through a new lens. The sense of freedom lingered, but I knew a confrontation was inevitable. I had barely unpacked my suitcase when a loud, insistent knocking echoed through my quiet apartment. I opened the door to find my mother, Ellie, and Jessica standing on my doormat, their faces stormy. "You're so selfish, Jillian." Ellie burst out before I could even speak. "We had to deal with the fallout of your little tantrum all week. The entire family is disappointed in you," my mother added, her voice trembling with indignation. "You ruined everything simply because you refused to help." I looked at them, at the three women who had shaped so much of my life, and I felt an unusual and profound calm. "You have always made decisions for me without ever asking for my input," I said, my voice even and clear. "You planned this trip, you took my money, and you treated me as a resource, not as a person. If you are upset because I refused to accept that role, then perhaps it's time you reflect on how you have been treating me for all these years." They stared at me, their angry tirades stalling in their throats. For the first time, I wasn't reacting to their anger with guilt or apologies. I was meeting it with a simple, unassailable truth. For the first time, I was not a problem to be solved, but a person to be reckoned with. And in their shocked silence, I knew I had finally, truly, found my own voice. Jessica let out a heavy sigh, folding her arms across her chest, her expression a mask of profound disappointment. "Jillian, don't you see? This is your family. We've always helped one another. But you're only thinking about yourself, and that is the definition of selfish." I met her gaze directly, my voice steady. "Jessica, you're right. Family is about helping each other. But that help has to be built on a foundation of mutual respect and understanding, not on obligation and entitlement. I have helped all of you for years, but when I needed the simple courtesy of being asked, of being included as an equal, no one was willing to give it. This isn't a family that supports each other, it's a system that makes demands." Ellie jumped in, her voice rising with incredulity. "You're acting as if we've treated you so horribly. The truth is, you've always been happy to help before. Now you're turning your back on all of us over this one little thing. You're just playing the victim, Jillian." A small, humorless laugh escaped my lips. "Ellie, do you have any idea how many of my own plans I have canceled, how much of my own time and energy I have given up to support this family? How many times I have been the one to step in when something needed to be done. And now, when all I asked for was to join a vacation as a participating family member, I'm called selfish and a victim? Do you honestly think that's fair? My mother stepped forward, placing a hand on the back of a chair as if for support, trying to regain control. Jillian, if you feel that you've been hurt, then I am sorry. But I still believe you have overreacted. All I wanted was a smooth, happy vacation, and now the whole thing has been tainted because of your stubbornness. I shook my head slowly, looking at her. For the first time, her carefully wielded words of disappointment failed to find their mark. Mom, this vacation was tainted from the moment you all decided my role without my consent. It was tainted by the lack of respect. I have always tried to be the daughter you wanted me to be, but that doesn't mean I don't have the right to say no when I am being treated unfairly. Ellie and Jessica began to speak at once, but I raised a hand, a simple gesture that silenced them. I'm not going to argue about this anymore. I have made my feelings and my perspective perfectly clear. If you cannot accept that, then that is your issue to resolve, not mine. The room fell into a heavy silence. They looked at me as if I were a stranger, a woman they did not recognize. But I didn't waver. This wasn't just about standing up for myself in a single argument. It was a declaration of independence. I would no longer be a supporting character in their stories, a convenient solution to their problems. I turned and walked toward my front door, opening it. The invitation was clear. They could either accept the new terms of our relationship, or they could leave. This time, I had chosen my own path, a path of freedom and self-respect, and there was no turning back. After that final, tense confrontation, I knew a fundamental shift had occurred. I no longer had any reason to cling to relationships that were built on a foundation of my own erasure. So, for the first time in my life, I chose a radical act of self-preservation. I chose silence. I didn't make a dramatic announcement. I simply left the family group chat, blocked the numbers that continued to send me guilt-laden messages, and deactivated my social media accounts. The sudden quiet was jarring at first, a void where a constant stream of demands and expectations used to be. But slowly, I realized it wasn't loneliness I was feeling. It was peace. With my newfound time and emotional energy, I began to explore the parts of myself I had long neglected. One Saturday morning, instead of running errands for my mother or preparing for a family get-together, I wandered into a small, independent bookstore in my neighborhood. A handwritten sign taped to the counter read, "Book Club, 4th Thursday of every month." On a whim, I signed up. It was a small, simple decision, but it opened a door into a new world. At those meetings, I found myself in the company of people who were interested in my thoughts on literature, not in what I could do for them. This small act of independence emboldened me. I started planning trips for myself, adventures I had never dared to consider before. I found a long weekend getaway to Charleston, South Carolina, a city I had always dreamed of visiting. I booked the flight, reserved a room in a historic inn, and created my own itinerary. The entire process was a revelation. There was no one to consult, no one scheduled to accommodate, no one's approval to seek. Strolling through the cobblestone streets of Charleston, the air thick with the scent of jasmine and the sea, I felt a sense of profound contentment. I spent hours exploring art galleries, lingering in centuries-old cemeteries, and enjoying long, leisurely meals with only a book for company. There were no criticisms, no passive-aggressive comments, no pressure to perform. I was simply living, breathing, and experiencing the world on my own terms. I felt my life, which had been stretched thin accommodating others, begin to coalesce around a new, solid center, me. When I returned home, I continued to expand my world. I enrolled in an evening pottery class at a local art center, and the feeling of clay spinning beneath my hands was grounding and therapeutic. I began to nurture my own apartment, filling it with plants, art, and books, transforming it from a functional space into a true sanctuary, a place whose peace was no longer available for others to disrupt. Gradually, I felt myself changing. The guilt that had been my constant companion for decades began to fade, replaced by a quiet confidence. I no longer flinched when I had to say no. I learned to set boundaries not as acts of aggression, but as necessary acts of self-care. My family, from what I heard through the grapevine of extended relatives, continued to label me as selfish and difficult. But their words had lost their power. They were describing a person who no longer existed. What I was doing wasn't selfish. It was survival. It was self-respect. It was the slow, beautiful, and sometimes painful process of choosing to live the life I deserved. As more time passed, a simple but powerful truth crystallized within me. Self-respect is not a selfish act. For years, I had conflated self-sacrifice with love, believing that my worth was measured by how much of myself I was willing to give away. I thought love meant submission, compliance, and the quiet erasure of my own needs. Now, I understand that true love, especially love for oneself, must begin with the establishment of healthy boundaries. Living life on my own terms illuminated the difference. Without the constant drain of meeting unfair expectations, I felt more vibrant and energized than I had in years. I was no longer exhausted and resentful from performing tasks I didn't want to do. Instead, I poured that energy back into myself, into my hobbies, my friendships, and my own well-being. My family's attempts to pull me back into the old dynamic continued sporadically. My mother would leave long, rambling voicemails filled with wounded sighs and accusations. Ellie would occasionally post a sarcastic meme on social media clearly aimed at me. But instead of feeling the familiar sting of hurt or anger, I would simply delete the message or scroll past the post. Their words were like arrows shot at a target that was no longer there. I had learned to protect my peace, not by engaging in their drama, but by calmly and quietly refusing to participate. I don't know if my family will ever understand the choice I made, but I have come to accept that their understanding is not required for my own happiness. I have chosen my path, a path that leads to quiet joy, authentic connections, and a profound sense of inner peace, and I will not look back. The most important lesson I have learned is that in the complex tapestry of family and life, our own thread is just as vital as any other. Sacrifice and helping others are beautiful things, but they must be offered freely, not demanded as a tax on our existence. Learning to say no is not an act of rejection, but an act of self-definition. We must learn to listen to our own feelings, to honor our own limits, and to lovingly, bravely, let go of relationships that ask us to be anything less than our whole selves. True self-respect is not the foundation of selfishness. It is the foundation of a life lived with integrity, peace, and grace. If this story resonated with you, I would be honored to hear your thoughts. Have you ever found yourself in a similar place? Don't forget to follow for more stories that explore the quiet, powerful lessons of life. Let us continue to spread messages of strength and positivity together.